50 pounds of sweet potatoes, one trash bag. Not a raised bed, not a garden plot, not a half-acre field. A single, heavy-duty trash bag sitting on a driveway, a patio, or a balcony. And a harvest that most people genuinely refuse to believe until they see it happen. Here is what nobody in the gardening world is saying clearly enough. Sweet potatoes are one of the highest yield food crops available to home growers, and the trash bag method, when executed correctly, produces yields that embarrass most in-ground growing setups at a fraction of the cost and effort. But here is the part that separates the people who get 50 pounds from the people who get 5. There are 4 decisions made before the first slip ever goes in the bag that determine everything. Most videos cover none of them. This one covers all 4, plus every step from slip preparation to harvest day, including the technique in step 7 that doubles the yield of an already productive bag. Stay with me through every step. The payoff at the end of this growing season is real. Drop your country in the comments right now and tell me, have you ever grown sweet potatoes before, and what method did you use? I want to know what this community has tried, because the trash bag system is going to look very different from anything most people have experienced. Before we get into the system, let's address the reason most sweet potato growing attempts, in containers, in bags, in the ground, fall short of their potential. Sweet potatoes are not difficult to grow. They are specific. The plant has a small number of non-negotiable requirements: soil temperature, vine management, moisture discipline, and harvest timing. And when those requirements are met, the yield is almost shockingly abundant. When they are missed, even partially, the result is a modest harvest that leaves most growers assuming the crop simply does not perform in their conditions. The trash bag method exploits something that most container growing systems cannot replicate: the ability to completely control the root environment of a plant that is extraordinarily sensitive to soil conditions. Sweet potato tubers form in the soil, not on roots, but on underground stem tissue called stolons, and the texture, temperature, drainage, and fertility of the soil they develop in directly determines their size, number, and quality. A trash bag filled with the right growing medium, placed in the right position, and managed with the right technique gives the developing tubers an environment so precisely matched to their requirements that the yield ceiling of the method is genuinely extraordinary. The competing content gap is significant. Most trash bag sweet potato videos show you the basic concept: fill a bag, plant a slip, harvest in fall, without covering the specific decisions that drive the difference between a disappointing result and a 50-pound harvest. The soil mix is almost always underspecified. The slip preparation is almost always glossed over. The vine management technique, which is the single biggest yield driver in the entire system, is almost always absent entirely. And the harvest timing and curing process, which determines whether you end up with sweet potatoes that taste exceptional and store for months, or ones that taste bland and deteriorate within weeks, is almost never covered in enough detail to be useful. We are covering all of it today, every step, every specific decision, in the order that the growing season requires. Step 1. Choosing and setting up the right bag. The trash bag is the starting point, and the bag selection matters more than most people expect, because not all trash bags are created equal for growing purposes. You need heavy-duty contractor-grade trash bags, the thick, black 30 to 45-gallon capacity bags designed for construction debris and heavy material. Standard kitchen trash bags are not suitable. They're too thin, they puncture easily under the weight of a filled growing medium, they degrade when exposed to UV light over a growing season, and they do not have the structural integrity to maintain their shape under the pressure of an expanding root system and repeated watering. Contractor bags in the 30 to 45-gallon range cost approximately $1 to $2 each at hardware stores, making the entire container investment for this growing system somewhere between $1 and $2 per bag. The cost-to-yield ratio of the trash bag method at that investment level is one of the most favorable of any food growing system available to home growers. The bag setup technique that most videos skip. Do not use the bag fully extended and upright. Fold the top edge of the bag down by approximately 1/3 of the total bag height, creating a rolled cuff that reduces the initial standing height of the bag from approximately 2 feet to approximately 2.5 to 3 feet. This folded cuff setup serves the same purpose as rolling down a grow bag in the potato hilling system. It allows you to progressively unroll the cuff as the vines grow, adding additional growing medium around the developing stems and creating additional stolon formation zones above the original planting depth. The cuff unrolling technique is the vine management step we will cover in detail later, and it is the technique that most dramatically increases yield beyond what a standard bag setup produces. Drainage is non-negotiable. Use a sharp knife or scissors to make 12 to 16 drainage holes across the bottom and lower sides of the bag before filling. Each hole should be approximately 1/2 inch in diameter. Without adequate drainage, the growing medium becomes waterlogged during watering, and waterlogged soil around developing sweet potato tubers promotes the fungal rots that destroy crops from the inside out, often without any visible above-ground symptoms until harvest day reveals the damage. Place the bag in its final growing position before filling. A filled 30 to 45-gallon bag is not practically movable. Position matters enormously for sweet potatoes, and we will cover the specifics in the next step. Step 2. Position and temperature. This is the step that most trash bag sweet potato content either skips entirely or handles with a single line, full sun, which is correct but incomplete in ways that significantly affect the yield outcome. Sweet potatoes are tropical plants. They evolved in warm, humid, equatorial environments, and their entire biology, germination, vine growth, stolon development, and tuber bulking, is optimized for warmth. The soil temperature in the root zone is the variable that most determines how productively the plant develops underground. Cool soil slows stolon production, reduces tuber set density, and produces smaller individual tubers than the same plant in warm soil. The optimal soil temperature range for sweet potato tuber development is between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit in the root zone. Here is the advantage that the trash bag method has over in-ground and raised bed growing that no competing video explains clearly. Black trash bags absorb solar radiation and transfer heat directly to the growing medium inside. In full sun, a black bag can raise the soil temperature inside by 10 to 15 degrees above the ambient air temperature, effectively extending the warm season growing window by several weeks at both ends of the season and maintaining the soil temperature in the optimal tuber development range even in climates where ground temperatures stay cooler than sweet potatoes prefer. This thermal advantage is maximized by positioning. Place the bag against a south-facing wall, fence, or solid structure that absorbs and reflects heat during the day. The combination of direct sun on the bag's surface and reflected heat from the structure behind it creates a heat accumulation zone that can maintain soil temperatures 5 to 10 degrees warmer than open garden positions, a measurable yield advantage that compounds across the entire growing season. Minimum sun requirement: 8 hours of direct daily sunlight. Sweet potatoes are not shade-tolerant crops. Below 8 hours, vine growth remains vigorous, but tuber development is significantly reduced. The plant produces abundant above-ground growth at the expense of underground storage root development. Full sun all day is ideal. 8 hours is the minimum threshold for a productive harvest. Step 3. The soil system. Here is where most trash bag sweet potato methods fail, and the failure is consistent enough across competing content that addressing it specifically is one of the most valuable things this video can do. The standard recommendation is potting mix or garden soil. Neither is correct for maximum yield, and the reasons are specific to sweet potato biology. Sweet potato tubers are enlarged storage roots that expand outward through the soil as they develop. The physical resistance they encounter during this expansion directly determines their final size. Dense, compacted, or poorly structured growing medium restricts tuber expansion, producing misshapen, small, crowded tubers, regardless of how good the nutrition and watering are. The soil system for maximum sweet potato yield must be genuinely loose and friable at every depth within the bag. Standard potting mix compacts under the repeated watering of a full growing season. Garden soil brought directly from the ground is often heavier and more compacted than potting mix even before the season begins. Neither provides the sustained loose structure that sweet potato tubers need for unobstructed development through the 4 to 5 months of the growing season. The soil system that works is 40% quality potting mix, 30% coconut coir, 20% perlite, and 10% coarse horticultural sand. The potting mix provides the base nutrient profile and microbial life. The coconut coir, a significant departure from standard recommendations that most videos never make, provides a lighter, more consistently loose structure than peat-based mixes, maintains even moisture distribution through the entire soil volume, and resists the compaction that reduces tuber development space over a long growing season. The perlite maintains drainage and aeration. The coarse sand adds the mineral grit that sweet potato roots respond to with stronger, more structured development. The amendment that most sweet potato content never mentions: mix 1 cup of blackstrap molasses per 20 gallons of soil volume before filling the bag. Dilute the molasses in water first, 1 cup per gallon of water, then pour this solution through the dry soil mix and turn it thoroughly before bagging. The molasses feeds the beneficial soil microorganism populations that improve nutrient availability and soil structure throughout the growing season. It also provides a slow-release source of potassium and micronutrients that sweet potatoes specifically demand for dense, flavorful tuber development. The pre-fill soil temperature activation step: after filling and before planting, water the bag thoroughly with warm water and place it in full sun for 3 to 5 days before planting your slips. This pre-warms the growing medium to the optimal soil temperature range and activates the microbial populations in the soil mix before the plant's root system arrives, creating a biologically active environment that supports establishment from day one, rather than requiring the plant to stimulate microbial activity itself during the critical early root development period. Step 4. Slip preparation and selection. The slip, the rooted cutting taken from a sweet potato vine that serves as the planting unit, is the starting material that determines the genetic ceiling of your harvest. And the preparation of that slip before planting determines how quickly and how strongly the plant establishes in the bag, which directly affects how much of the growing season is spent in productive tuber development versus recovery from establishment stress. Growing your own slips from a store-bought or saved sweet potato is the most cost-effective approach and gives you access to the widest range of varieties. Place a sweet potato in a shallow container of warm water, submerging approximately the bottom third of the potato in a warm, bright location. Within 2 to 3 weeks, slips will emerge from the eyes of the potato, leafy shoots attached to a short stem. When the slips are 4 to 6 inches long, twist them gently from the parent potato and place their stem bases in a glass of water for 5 to 7 days until a robust root system develops. Water-rooted slips establish in the bag significantly faster than unrooted slips planted directly into soil. The difference in establishment speed translates to 1 to 2 additional weeks of productive growing time, which at the end of a full season means measurably larger tubers. The variety selection gap that almost no competing video addresses with enough specificity. Not all sweet potato varieties perform equally in confined growing systems. Varieties with compact vine habits produce more tubers per unit of soil volume in a bag than vigorous spreading varieties, because the plant's energy is concentrated into the root zone rather than distributed across an expansive above-ground vine network. Beauregard is the most widely recommended container and bag variety. It produces high tuber density, has excellent flavor, and its moderately vigorous vine is well suited to the management techniques we will cover. Georgia Jet is the second recommendation. It is the fastest maturing variety available, reaching harvest readiness in approximately 90 days compared to the 100 to 110 days of most other varieties, which makes it the best choice for gardeners in shorter season climates. Covington produces exceptional flavor and stores longer than most varieties, making it the choice for growers who prioritize culinary quality and storage life over maximum raw yield. What to avoid? Hernandez and O'Henry varieties, which produce very vigorous above-ground vines that are difficult to manage in the bag system and tend to allocate energy to vine growth at the expense of tuber production in confined growing environments. Step 5. Planting. With the bag pre-warmed, the soil mix prepared, and the water-rooted slips ready, the planting step itself is straightforward, but 3 specific details determine whether the plant establishes vigorously or struggles through the first weeks of growth. Plant depth. Bury the slip so that the bottom 2 to 3 nodes, the points on the stem where leaves attach, are below the soil surface, with the remaining foliage above. Each buried node has the potential to develop roots and eventually stolons that produce tubers. More buried nodes at planting means more potential tuber formation sites from the very beginning of the growing season. Planting density. 2 slips per 30 to 45-gallon bag. This is the density that produces the best balance between individual tuber size and total bag yield. 1 slip per bag produces larger individual tubers but lower total weight. 2 slips positioned approximately 8 inches apart in the center of the bag is the optimized density for the 50-pound yield target. Initial watering. Water thoroughly immediately after planting, slowly and completely until water exits the drainage holes at the base of the bag. Then hold off on the next watering until the top 3 inches of soil have dried completely. This post-planting dry-down period forces the developing root system to extend downward through the soil in search of moisture, building the deep, expansive root architecture that supports stolon development and tuber formation across the full depth of the bag. Immediate rewatering after planting keeps moisture at the surface and encourages shallow root development that limits the plant's tuber production potential later in the season. Place the planted bag in its full sun position immediately. Do not keep it in a sheltered or partial shade location for an establishment period. Sweet potatoes establish faster and more vigorously in full sun and warmth from the very first day of planting. Step 6. The vine management system. This is the step that determines whether a trash bag sweet potato planting produces a modest harvest or a genuinely exceptional one, and it is the step that the vast majority of competing content either omits entirely or covers so briefly that it provides no actionable value. Sweet potato vines left to spread freely across the ground around the bag will root at every node that contacts soil. This sounds productive, and in a large in-ground system, it is. In a trash bag system, it is the single biggest yield reduction behavior available to the plant. Every node that roots into external soil outside the bag becomes a tuber formation site outside the bag, which means at harvest, a significant portion of your sweet potato yield is scattered across the ground surrounding the bag in locations you did not intend and cannot easily collect. The solution is vine management, redirecting the extending vines back up and over the bag and progressively filling the bag to bury additional stem nodes within the controlled growing environment of the bag itself. Here is the complete vine management protocol. When the vines extend approximately 12 inches beyond the bag edge, gather them and fold them back over the bag rim, tucking the extending stems back into the top of the bag. Unroll the cuff of the bag by 2 to 3 inches and add a layer of fresh growing medium over the tucked-in vine sections. This buries additional stem nodes within the bag, where they will produce roots and stolons that develop tubers in the controlled soil environment rather than outside it. Repeat this process every 2 to 3 weeks throughout the growing season as the vines extend and the cuff progressively unrolls. By the end of the growing season, a well-managed trash bag should have its cuff fully unrolled to maximum height and the interior filled to within 2 to 3 inches of the top rim, with multiple layers of buried stem creating stolon development zones at every level from the original planting depth all the way to the top of the bag. This vertical column of buried stem nodes, each supporting its own cluster of developing tubers at multiple levels, is what produces the 50-pound yield that a simple single-layer planting cannot approach. The secondary vine management technique that doubles the effectiveness of the first. Pinch the growing tips of the primary vines every 3 to 4 weeks during the active growing season. Pinching removes the apical growing tip, the point of dominant growth at the end of each vine, and triggers branching at multiple points along the stem below the pinch. More branches mean more vine material to fold back into the bag, more nodes to bury, and more tuber formation sites created with each management cycle. Unpinched vines produce one long extending stem. Pinched vines produce 4 to 6 branches from the same energy investment, and each branch provides additional burying material for the next management cycle. Step 7. Watering discipline through the season. The watering approach for trash bag sweet potatoes follows the same phase-specific logic of any container root crop, and the specific requirements at each phase are different enough that applying the same watering approach throughout the season consistently reduces yield in measurable ways. Establishment phase, from planting through the first 4 weeks of growth, minimal watering. The goal is deep root development, not surface moisture maintenance. Check the soil at 4-inch depth for every watering decision. If moist at 4 inches, do not water. If dry at 4 inches, water thoroughly and allow to drain completely. The trash bag's drainage holes make overwatering during this phase immediately visible. If water is not exiting the bottom within a minute of watering, the drainage holes need to be enlarged or additional holes added. Active vine growth phase, from week 4 through the point when you notice the first visible vine slowdown. Consistent, moderate moisture. The plant is producing significant above-ground biomass, and its water demand increases accordingly. Water when the top 2 inches are dry. During hot summer weather, this may mean watering every 2 to 3 days. During cooler periods, it may mean every 4 to 5 days. The bag's black surface accelerates moisture evaporation. Check the soil more frequently during heat waves than you would with a lighter-colored container. Tuber bulking phase, the final 6 to 8 weeks before harvest, identifiable when the above-ground vine growth slows and the plant stops producing significant new foliage. This is the moisture-critical phase. Inconsistent moisture during tuber bulking, alternating between dry stress and heavy watering, produces the cracking, irregular shapes, and hollow centers that reduce both yield quality and storage life.
Maintain the most consistent moisture of the entire season during this phase. Never allow the soil to dry below 3 inches during active tuber bulking. Final 2 weeks before harvest, deliberately reduce watering to allow the bag soil to partially dry down. This concentrates the sugars in the developing tubers, measurably improving flavor at harvest, and begins the skin toughening process that improves storage life. Sweet potatoes harvested from a soil environment that has been deliberately dried for the final 2 weeks store longer and taste sweeter than those harvested from a consistently moist growing medium right up to harvest day.
Step 8. Feeding for maximum tuber weight. Sweet potatoes are categorized as a crop that thrives in poor soil, and this characterization, while partially true, is the source of one of the most common yield-limiting errors in home sweet potato growing. It is true that sweet potatoes do not need the high nitrogen inputs that leafy greens and brassicas require. Excess nitrogen in sweet potato growing produces exactly what you do not want: abundant, lush, dark green above-ground vine growth at the direct expense of underground tuber development. A sweet potato plant growing in high nitrogen soil is a plant whose biology has been signaled to prioritize vegetative growth over storage root production. This nitrogen sensitivity is real and must be respected. What is equally true, and what the poor soil characterization obscures, is that sweet potatoes have significant potassium and phosphorus requirements for tuber development that must be met for maximum yield. Potassium drives starch synthesis in the tubers, the process that builds dense, heavy, flavorful storage root tissue. Phosphorus supports the root system development and stolon formation that creates the network from which tubers develop. A sweet potato plant growing in soil with adequate nitrogen but inadequate potassium and phosphorus will produce vigorous vines and disappointing tubers. The feeding protocol for the trash bag system: apply no nitrogen fertilizer after the first 2 weeks of establishment. During establishment, a single application of a balanced liquid fertilizer at half the recommended rate supports early root development without triggering excessive vine growth. After week 2, switch exclusively to a high potassium, low nitrogen liquid fertilizer. Tomato fertilizer in the standard formulation works well, applied every 3 weeks through the tuber bulking phase. Add a monthly application of wood ash tea, 1 cup of wood ash steeped in a gallon of water overnight, the liquid strained and applied as a soil drench, which provides additional potassium and calcium that contributes to tuber skin quality and storage life. Step 9. Reading the plant and knowing when to harvest. The harvest timing decision is where the most yield is lost in sweet potato growing, not from disease, not from pest damage, not from growing system failures, but from the simple error of harvesting at the wrong time. The external signals that indicate harvest readiness: the vines begin to yellow and die back naturally, not from disease or frost damage, but as a normal end-of-season senescence response. The soil at the top of the bag begins to crack slightly as the tubers beneath push against it during the final weeks of expansion. When you press the side of the bag, you can feel the resistance of large, firm tubers through the bag wall. The bag that was soft and yielding at planting feels firm and almost solid at harvest readiness. In climates with a defined frost season, harvest must happen before the first frost reaches the bag soil. Frost damage to sweet potato tubers happens quickly and produces storage problems that manifest weeks later as the damaged tissue rots from the inside. Monitor the forecast and harvest within 2 to 3 days of the first expected frost if the plant has not yet completed its natural dieback. The harvest method for the trash bag system: Cut the vines at the base with scissors or pruning shears. Then cut or tear the bag down one side from top to bottom. The entire soil column will be accessible from the side, allowing you to work through it with your hands rather than digging tools. Sweet potatoes are surprisingly fragile at harvest. Their skin is thin and easily damaged by even careful tool use. Hand harvesting from the opened bag side produces clean, undamaged tubers that cure and store beautifully. Work carefully and slowly through the entire soil column from top to bottom. Tubers form at every node level, which in a well-managed bag means from within a few inches of the top all the way to the drainage holes at the bottom. Step 10. Curing for maximum flavor and storage. This is the final step that most sweet potato content either skips or covers in a single sentence, and it is the step that determines whether your harvest feeds your family for 2 months or for 6. Fresh harvested sweet potatoes are not ready to eat at peak flavor. The curing process, a specific combination of warmth, humidity, and time, converts starches in the flesh to sugars, heals any minor skin damage from harvesting, and creates a protective secondary skin layer over the cured tuber that dramatically extends storage life. The curing conditions, 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 to 90% relative humidity for 10 to 14 days. In practical home-growing terms, this means a warm room with a pan of water placed near the stored tubers to maintain humidity, a spare bathroom, a warm basement corner, or a heated garage space during warm weather. Lay the tubers in a single layer on newspaper or cardboard, not stacked, not touching, with gentle air circulation from a small fan if available. After curing, move the tubers to a cool, dark storage location. 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal. Cured sweet potatoes stored in these conditions keep for 6 to 8 months without significant quality loss. Uncured sweet potatoes stored in the same conditions keep for 4 to 6 weeks before deteriorating. The curing step multiplies storage life by a factor of 3 to 4, from a 2-month crop to a 6 to 8-month pantry staple from a single trash bag harvest. Here is the complete picture of what this system produces when every step is followed correctly. A $2 contractor bag, a soil mix of coir, potting mix, perlite, and sand activated with molasses, water-rooted slips of a high-density variety like Beauregard or Georgia Jet, a south-facing, heat-accumulating position, progressive vine folding and cuff unrolling through the growing season, phase-appropriate watering, deep root development at establishment, consistent moisture through bulking, deliberate dry down at harvest approach, low nitrogen, high potassium feeding from week 2 through bulking, harvesting at natural dieback, 10 to 14 days of curing at warmth and humidity, 6 to 8 months of storage from a single harvest. The result? 50 pounds of sweet potatoes from one bag, harvested fresh, cured for maximum flavor, stored for maximum duration, from a container that cost $2 and occupied less floor space than a large potted plant. That is what this system produces, and now you have everything you need to build it. Would you try the trash bag method this growing season? Drop your answer in the comments and tell me which variety you would start with. The community conversation on this video is going to be one of the most useful we have had, because sweet potato growing in bags produces questions at every stage, and the answers in the comments section are always more valuable than any single video can be alone. If this gave you a complete, step-by-step system with the specific details that other videos skip, hit the like button, subscribe if you are not already here, and drop your country in the comments. Let us map where this community is growing from. Keep growing your Green Sprout Lab. I'll see you in the next one.